It's a Maximum News mini-sode. Max Derrat is unavailable this week, sadly, and Sybsidian will be joining us by phone. My name is Ash Ryan, and I am a producer-director for the Triple S League, which runs this channel. Skull and Bones has been delayed yet again. It was supposed to come out in November of this year, and now it's been pushed back to March of 2023. This is the 5th delay, Syb. What about that?
Just a shocking surprise for me. Absolutely shocking surprise for me. No, it's not. It's not a shocking surprise. I don't think anybody was looking at this going, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get this at this time. Because that's just been the nature of this game. It may be that it might be that it's cursed. But the fact of the matter is that Ubisoft has dropped the ball on this project from the very day that they announced it right up until now. And whatever leadership they had there, whatever funnel or way of working on this game that they had, has been a complete and total debacle. This will probably go down as one of the worst conceptual ideas, brought out. It's like this is going to become a case of how not to do things. Period. What can small development studios and bigger development studios learn from this? The number one thing that they can learn from this is do not creep or consistently and continually change your systems. Once you have a working generalized prototype, follow it through, and if there's a feature creep or an idea or a concept that comes in and it does not immediately improve the game by at least 50%, don't bother including it, because or you have like a limited number of times that you allow that to happen. The fact of the matter is that this game should have taken what was in the original game that they're modeling this after, take all the programming and that kind of stuff, improve it by about 50 to 100% as far as like depth and graphics and all that kind of stuff goes, and then just put it out. That should have been what they did here, because this isn't some kind of a masterpiece rebrand to an existing genre. This is, hey, this is really fun and people like playing this. That was over almost a decade ago now. So a decade later, they're like, oh yeah, still working on it, still wrestling with these ideas. It's like, again, this isn't some advanced form of Civilization 7 with multiple interactive features that have never been tried before. This is straight up taking a combat system that people really enjoyed and making a game out of it. That was all this was supposed to be. So this isn't something that was supposed to have this 5-6 year development track of just coming up with a brand new thing. This is straight up, they were supposed to take one thing that played well and they were just supposed to expand on that. And in the process of that, they took that and ran with that in 100 different directions, trying to reiterate on things that were already really good. And why they would do that, I don't know. It's a very unhealthy way, but that's the biggest lesson to learn is if you have an idea, if you have a concept that somebody likes, and there's an existing thing out there, and you just have that slight twist on it that everybody's asking for, just do that thing. You don't need to retwist and twist tie and knot and braid the concept, the idea, to the point where it's no longer what people were looking for. And that's what we have here. We have a game that people were like, this is really fun. I wish I could play this as a game. And somebody in the office going, yeah, that's a good idea. And then handing it off to somebody else, or them saying to that somebody else, hey, maybe we should just change everything radically and try to expand on it 100 times. It's like, no, that is the worst idea that you could possibly do.
And you're right, because this initially started as taking the ship combat from Black Flag and turning it into a game, and it's become something else entirely. It's become this whole other creature with lots of scope creep. All right, so next topic for today, something that nobody saw coming. I'm sure not even Nostradamus saw this one. I'm sure you didn't even see it, Syb. Stadia is shutting down. Google Stadia, the next generation of game distribution and streaming on the, this was going to revolutionize the industry. it's dead in the water. They're well, it's been dead in the water since launch, one could argue, but they are officially biting the bullet and shutting it down. Your thoughts?
This is just such a bizarre thing. No, of course everybody saw this coming. That anybody would think that after that launch that this was going to have a long shelf life. And why was it? Again, the why comes down to the leadership in this, especially in this case, because it's a little bit more open, it's a little bit more forefront. What they should have done, what they should have focused on, was things that would have done well in that position, things that they could have loaded into and done that kind of stuff. Instead, they tried to be PlayStation and Microsoft, Xbox at the exact same time. They tried to be both of those things at the same time, whilst bringing in none of the ease of feature, the quick fire games, the easy indie titles. They brought in very little to none of those that actually would have been like a perfect fit for this concept, for this idea. And instead, they doubled down on probably one of the most ballsy ideas of like, oh yeah, we're going to have like, super AAA, titles and stuff like that, that the people who will be able to afford this are going to be able to just, they're going to play this and it's going to be better than when they're playing it on their, $500-$600 console or their $3,000 to $4,000 PC. Because again, only wealthy people, like high middle class and up, were able to get this thing working and functioning and to be able to afford it at the price they were pitching it at. This is quite possibly one of the most stupidest ideas I've ever heard.
I remember when Stadia was first coming out, the biggest question that a lot of us had was, who is this for?
They packaged it up, sold it at an incredibly high price. All of the games were like, in most cases, they were more expensive if you were buying it on any other platform. And then on top of that, you had to have like the best internet, and you had to live in like high density clubs, not clubs, sorry, communities and the suburbs. That's the word I was going for. You had to be in the suburbs in order for basically for this to like function really, really well. And you had to be in these areas where, not where there's like, 20, 30,000 people in tight housing. You had to be in areas where it was like, you're basically in the suburbs. Everybody's got, you're in those lots that are, each lot is about half the size or quarter size of a baseball field. And, it's just very like fancy, expensive fiber all in those areas. That's the only group of people that this was functioning well off of. And I think that was obviously that was one of their many, many mistakes on this. If they had instead created a tool that allowed you to play older games, more simpler games, more like simpler concept stuff on your TV with a controller, and it was basically free, and they were tying it into things like YouTube, things that help them identify better advertising, making deals to do special game drops with other stuff, and then they sold merch on top of it. I think that system right there would have made them a whole lot more money. That's the thing where they screwed up. They were trying to release like modern day, top tier games instead of going, hey, you remember all those great, amazing games that you can't play anymore because all the consoles are dead and gone that had them? We're going to bring those to your TV, upgraded, smoothed out, better graphics, really cool controller, and we're going to bring that to you for $50. You don't even have to have a constant subscription model or anything like that either. It's like you just or even a solid internet connection. As long as you can get in, download a couple of these light games, then you'll be able to have them access, and then you build that up from there. You develop the infrastructure that manages to succeed in that small capacity, then you slowly expand from there. Instead, they tried to jump in ahead of Sony, PlayStation, and Xbox, Microsoft. They tried to jump in front of them and say, "Oh yes, we're just the same as you." And it reminds me of that scene from from the it's the tie off to like the Honest Trailer guys where they were doing the MCU and the Superman universe, and you had Batman and Superman in the cafe, and Mario comes in and he looks at Batman and he's like, "We are the same, not the same," and Batman's like, "We're not the same." And they, no, we are the same. We both wear costume and we both fight crime. We are the same. It's like, no, you're not the same. That's Google Stadia. Google Stadia is a dumb Mario coming into a conversation between Superman and Batman, and looking at them and going, "We are the same." That's what they did, and they did that at such a catastrophe that it's again, it's just this, it's another black mark on these big companies. And if you ever wonder, it's like, oh, should we really worry about super mega companies taking over the world? This is a great example why that's probably never going to happen, because nobody's that stupid aside from big mega companies when they're like, hey, let's drop $40 billion on a project and see if it works. It's them and government that makes those kinds of decisions, and that, you know, completely and totally falls through. Like that highway or bridge project that your, you know, local municipality started at 8 times the cost that it should have cost, and it's still going on 7 years later. Congratulations. You've hit that peak level of like corporate, you know, intelligence bloat that now doesn't actually get anything done. And that's exactly what happened with Stadia.
Speaking of lost money, they are now working to refund everything that everybody bought through Stadia, including the hardware. And this also the games, the software that were purchased, and you have game publishers now scrambling to get people their games that they bought, or at least their save games and characters and things, to transfer those to other platforms so that people can still play their games. Now, there's not a lot of time to get this done because Stadia goes offline on January 18th of 2023. And interestingly, well, it's called a black flag. Skull and Bones is still listed as releasing on Stadia, even though it's not coming out until Stadia is going offline. Don't buy the game on Stadia, let's put it that way. Moving on then, speaking of corporations and governments, we have, you had a story you wanted to address regarding Tencent, Syb.
Yeah, so for a while now, I've been saying, for well over a year, I've been saying now that Tencent wants to get out of China ASAP. They want to, in a perfect world in their eyes, I think, where they can't obviously like change like, you know, geopolitics, they would pull out of China tomorrow if that was even remotely possible. Because what we see them doing is we see them doubling down and investing in everything that is not in China. And this flies in the face of EA and Microsoft and PlayStation to a good amount as well. These people thought that China was going to be their golden goose that never stopped laying golden eggs. They believed that this was going to be a perfect universe for them to just pump out, you know, very low, you know, cost of development and just reap, you know, billions upon billions upon billions of rewards, because they could do literally anything there. Well, it turns out working in China in the games industry right now is, I don't have a good quip for this. It's like trying to it's not good. It's not good. It is very, very bad. Who saw this coming? I did a year ago. I've been saying it since then.
All right, we potentially have some unfortunate news for those waiting for a sequel to Disco Elysium. This company that neither of us know how to pronounce this. The company is ZA/UM, or for our American counterparts, ZA/UM. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that, so I'm going to call it ZAUM. Martin Luigia, a founding member and secretary of the ZAUM Cultural Association, and I'm not even sure what that is. There's this thing called the ZAUM Cultural Association, which is not the development company. Anyway, he's dissolving this cultural association, and in his announcement for doing that, he announced that key members of the Disco Elysium team have departed the development studio, and that the departure was, quote, involuntary. Robert Kurvitz, Helen Hindpeer, and Alexander Rostov are no longer with the studio. They're some of the most important creative minds behind Disco Elysium, and they have confirmed that they are no longer with the studio. They haven't elaborated on the details beyond that, but that's not hopeful for, a Disco Elysium 2, or if there is a Disco Elysium 2, that, it'll maintain the creative integrity of the first game. Not much more to say about that. So let's talk about the European Union.
Because we're getting all kinds of political here today. Oh, my.
The Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard is under scrutiny by the European Union because, of course it is. The government uppity-ups have to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and whatever, make sure it's all legal and fine. And,
make sure that it fits their plan, their rules of things, because, governments are afraid of corporations getting a little too much power. So it's like government doesn't like competition. It's so bizarre.
Okay, I'm just thinking of several governments that seem pretty buddy-buddy with several technology mega corporations. But anyway, according to Deal Reporter sources, the boss of Sony Interactive Entertainment personally visited the European Union headquarters about a month ago, September 8th, to voice concerns about the deal. So you have Xbox's biggest console competitor visiting the European Union political headquarters to argue against the acquisition of Activision Blizzard being acquired by Microsoft.
They're going to fight it. They're going to fight it pretty hard because PlayStation can't play at the money level that Xbox can. And that is, we've talked a lot about this over the last little while. Yes, it's concerning. Yes, it's worrisome. But right now, it's one of those things where it's like, I think it's the better move for the here and now. And I think it'll help clean up Activision Blizzard and maybe save some of our favorite franchises. And that's not to say that Microsoft is a great savior and is full of noble intentions. No, that's more of a statement on how bad Activision has been running Blizzard and allowing that to just get to a point where a bunch of products are they're having a real hard time, and there's some serious problems that need to be addressed there. So yeah, that's more a statement on that than this. We're going to see some drama from this. I really do think this is going to go through 100%. Even if the EU board tries to block it, if the other boards around the world have all agreed, they're going to be outnumbered, and Microsoft will end up having to pay some kind of a fine or fee or something, and I'm sure it'll make it go away. And yeah, just in this tight time, there's a lot of governments that are looking to squeeze corporations for more money or more taxes or more, other stuff. So we'll see how that goes. You might hear a declaration that they're reopening, more offices in the EU for, customer service, because they did. That's one of the things that Activision has done recently is they fired an enormous amount of people from those European teams. And so it could be that those kinds of complaints are ringing in the ears of some of those politicians, and they'll be like, hey, if you're going to do this, you got to reopen, and then you have to guarantee that Europe's not going to lose any more jobs than they have already lost under this deal. So it could be that, could also be, there could be some genuine concerns about company size and monopoly and stuff like that, but I kind of doubt it.
That's what they're supposedly investigating to make sure, is that it's all
but that's very rarely. Yeah, it's very rarely what they're actually interested in, though. In my humble opinion.
You think government bureaucrats have ulterior motives? What are you suggesting, son?
I know, right? It's bizarre.
Well, it just shows how tangled these issues sometimes get, and then you have the interests of big government colliding with the interests of big corporations, and I just want to move to some other planet where I can just get away from both of them sometimes. Finally, in what sounds like it should be a Babylon Bee headline, although I assure you it is not, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds has been banned by the Taliban for promoting violence. It's really hard to keep a straight face while reading this, but promoting violence and misleading youth are the reasons they give for banning PUBG, and also TikTok is apparently being banned for the same reasons. I don't know, I guess these apps must promote like education for girls or something. They can't have that, so they've got to shut it down, because that's what tyrants have to do when their ideas don't stand on their own, and so they have to enforce them by force and by censorship and all of those things.
This is one of these things, like you said, Babylon Bee or The Onion. I swear I saw something like this on The Onion like many years ago, and it just comes down to the fact that everything is so insane right now that we have the Taliban arguing about, wanting to protect kids from violence. Yeah, I don't want to start any political debates. I just want that to sink in. That's definitely a thing that's now happening in 2022.
Now, I don't exactly understand what their plan is here, unless they're planning to ban, shooters outright or games outright. I mean, something else is just going to replace PUBG. India found that out when they banned it in their country, as did Nepal and Pakistan. I'm not sure the reasoning behind those bans, but in India cited security concerns because PUBG is a Chinese app. It may have just been kind of a jab at China, since there's some tension going on between the two countries. But when they did ban it in India, it was pretty much immediately replaced by Battlegrounds Mobile India, which was basically just a rebranded version of PUBG. People are going to find a way. And not only that, but when people realize that you're hiding ideas from them, it makes them naturally more curious about them. That's how we're naturally wired as human beings. And by the way, if the only way you can win an argument is by shutting down the other side, then your ideas probably suck. That's just basic logic. All right, that's it for this mini-sode of Maximum News. My name is Ash. Thanks for joining me today. Max Derrat and Sybsidian should be back with a regular show next week, and we will see you then.